Everyone's signed in for the meeting in the back entrance to the room. If you've not, please do so because it must be on the record. I'm Bob Tanner. The board members tonight are Scott Calhoun and Charles Fott. I'd like to introduce the following members. We have Matthew Puz, Zoning and Development Officer, Julie Maggio, Assistant Zoning and Development Officer, Jeremy Toman, Board Solicitor, Tamara Doxey, Court Reporter. After the presentation by the appellant, the board will hear from those in question the appeal, those in favor, and those opposed. Any documents or evidence that's presented must be kept for a period of 60 days for our records, and after all the presentations are made, the board will recess. We'll then reconvene and make our decisions. We have up to 45 days to render a decision, but they're usually made this evening. If you do not care to wait for the decision, you may call the zoning office in the morning after 8:30. I'd now ask that everyone please stand to be sworn in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please answer, I do. Thank you. All right, we only have one appeal for tonight. It's appeal number 25-31. Megan K. Peck for property located at 4845 Westlake Road, seeking a use variance to convert a place of worship assembly to a professional service in the R1 single-family residential district. Please come on up, who's ever going to present, and state your name and address for the record.
This is just what I'm going to say tonight, okay? It's in writing.
Okay.
Hi, I'm David Haller. I own 4845 Westlake Road. I'm familiar with the zoning hearing people, and I appreciate what you guys do. I've been here maybe 10 times throughout my construction career. So a bit of housekeeping right now. The power of attorney, my wife, who is ill, owns the building, and I have the power of attorney to speak for her and do whatever business she needs to do. And I'd like to correct a mistake on one of the submissions I submitted to you guys.
Okay.
And that is, the building is not 6,800 square feet. The building is 5,600 square feet.
Okay.
It measures 80 foot by 70 foot, okay? I'm here because of the application of the variance, but I'd like to make a rhetorical question, and that is, rather than go through all this, why don't we just change the zoning to what it should be? That's a rhetorical question.
Well, we're going to ask Matt to chime in and explain what the situation is.
Yes, the reason why we're here is that during the 2022 update, this area was rezoned to R1 single-family residential. Prior to that, it was a commercial use. The prior zoning, the C2 district, permitted both commercial uses as well as places of worship assembly. When it was rezoned, the other commercial uses became non-conforming. However, the R1 district permits churches, places of worship. So that use still remains conforming. So any change to from a conforming use to a non-conforming use would require a variance. So basically the space that is a church now needs a variance to become the professional service.
And to answer your rhetorical question, as far as changing the zoning type, that's not something that this board can do. That's a supervisor action to change the zoning.
I expected that answer.
Okay, just so we're all clear.
I'm going to start off by by talking about what I talked about at the end of my submission.
Okay.
And that is a zoning anomaly. A property that was legally established before zoning rules changed but no longer conforms. Something different, abnormal, peculiar, not easily classified, deviation from the common rule, type, or arrangement of form. I'm just throwing that out there. So this variance is officially from Megan Peck, but she asked me to speak because I know more about the building than anybody here. and I'm going to call on her later to tell you what she wants to do. So this is to the Mill Creek Township Planning Board. Julie, Matthew, thank you for your help. 4845 Westlake Road, I've submitted pictures, and you have site plans, you have pretty much everything you need to know. I'd like to refer you, though, to Exhibit F in my page 5 of my thing, which is the timeline of events that occurred throughout the history of this building. And, you know, you can just tell the building was built, it was B business, it was sold, and then I remodeled the place for Compass Corporation in 1981. It was B business. 1987, I bought the building. It was B business. 2018, the church, or 2008, we put a roof on the building and got a building permit, and it was B business. In 2018, the church came to me and wanted to rent from me. I looked at the zoning in 2018, B business. It was legal. As a side note, we always served as we served as an incubator for businesses. That is to say, they started out small, they grew or they failed. We didn't hold them to big rents or long leases. And that's been the theme of the building ever since I've owned it. So anyway, April 22nd comes along, and you guys changed the zoning. You guys meaning Mill Creek Township.
Mill Creek, not this board.
Now, I realized that it was a comprehensive rezoning, and I know all the rules. I've looked it all up. But I didn't know anything about it. When I found out about it, when I went to sell my building, October 18th of this year, I got a lowball figure, which we'll describe later, and said, your zoning is, unacceptable. Your zoning is crazy. It's split. Half the building's this, half the building's that. In layman's terms, that's what was said. In reality, you know what it is. It's one's conforming, one's non-conforming, and so anyway. So I've given you a page describing the property and all that stuff, and of course, my variance is I want to convert the church to professional offices. I have two approaches to this. The first approach is a use variance, and we're submitting this variance application for the property 4845 West Lake Road, currently zoned R1. The request seeks permission to allow professional office use in an existing building originally constructed under B business. And of course, I just gave you that timeline. The building has existed for over, I say 35 years, but it really has existed 51 years. It was built in 1974. And from the beginning, it was B business. All of a sudden, I rent the building to a church, small church, then they grew. And now that, right at this point, and as of 22, they occupied about 48% of my building. The rezoning, R1 now changes the use of the building and now prohibits office uses because the zoning was changed. Nobody told me, but the zoning was changed. This is a rental building. It has tenants coming and going. But whenever there was a tenant, of course, with any questionable thing, I always checked. What's the zoning? Are we legal? Now I need a variance. The need to survive, modernize, and function normally. There's no substantial detriment to the neighborhood properties. There's no increase in the noise. As a matter of fact, if you went by on Sunday morning, you'd see the car parking lot had about 31 cars. I counted them. a lot more noise, a lot more traffic. We believe there is consistency with public interest. We believe there is minimal relief. We're not asking for anything other than a paper change, basically. We're not creating anything non-conformity compared to the past. We're just asking to get where we've been for 51 years. We believe this use is safe and compatible. So, we believe that without this variance, I'm going to suffer a pretty big hardship. If I don't get this variance, my buyer is going to walk away. It's in her contract. We didn't create this hardship. We believe the variance will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. We don't believe that it's going to permanently or substantially impair the appropriate use or the development of the adjacent property. This variance will not be detrimental to public welfare. And this is the minimum that we should do or could do or can do. Hardship. Use has been in place for 51 years as offices. Property has several land-based circumstances that are not shared by ordinary R1 residential lots. Enable reasonable use. These are all things that I gleaned from your ordinance and from the municipality planning code of the state of Pennsylvania. The building's only reasonable use is office space, professional or retail. It can't reasonably accommodate modern residents with setbacks and the like. This entire meeting is about something that the township created, not me, not my buyer. The neighborhood will continue to remain as it was. In fact, our proposal is less intense. Just to be clear, Megan will describe to you that she will ask the church to leave and she will want to remodel and use that space as offices. This is the minimum action that can be taken. And this is unique. This hardship is unique to this property. This is beyond, I think, what you guys have heard. I don't know that. I'm making an assumption. Excuse me for that. So, unique physical characteristics. You know, the building is long-standing, pre-existing. You know, it significantly differs from R1 residential. The lot's fully developed with a non-residential building. Its physical configuration prevents property from functioning as a typical single-family residential use. These conditions are inherent to the property and not common to the neighborhood. Inability to reasonably use the property under R1 zoning due to the nature and structure. Strict conformity with R1 would deprive the property of any reasonable use. The building can't be practically converted into a single-family dwelling without extensive demolition and reconstruction, and it just doesn't make sense. I think everybody has to agree with that here. The hardship was not created by me or anyone. The hardship was not self-created. It was created through the zoning change. We're not changing the essential character of the neighborhood. I just want to restore 48% of the building to offices so that Megan can buy the building and move forward with a beautiful plan that'll probably enhance the neighborhood, improve things, create jobs, all those good things. This is minimum variance necessary. The request is limited only what we need. We're not asking for anything else. I've looked up MPC 910-2A5, and I believe that our criteria satisfies that. So, because it does, I respectfully ask you to request that you grant the variance that we're asking for. Let's look at Exhibit H. This has to do with me and me only, and that is, if this variance is not granted, the entire makeup and value and marketability of the building will change drastically. I have already experienced, and I have Jake here who will describe that if you'd like, two people who saw the zoning situation and said, here's a lowball offer, and I'll cancel my offer because the building's not worth anything to me. So that's the spiel that you were expecting from me when I submitted you that stuff back when we had the deadline of what, November 7th? November 7th was the deadline, yeah. But I have another approach that's come up since, and that is expansion. I took this right off of your non-conforming use ordinance, 145-01, C, enlargement, zoning officer may permit enlargement, da-da-da-da-da-da, right? You're reading it, you know what it says. You've gone by it before. Enlargement or expansion of the non-conforming use shall be limited to an area not to exceed 25% of the gross floor area of the structure. We don't meet that. Or 25% of the portion of the total lot area that was used by the non-conforming use as of the date the use became non-conforming. I'm pausing because I want you to make sure you read that sentence a couple times because it took me a week to understand it. What this means to me is that I have this lot, this entire lot, and it's got 22,770 square feet, less grass areas, parking, sidewalks included, 21,495 square feet. I have 52% of the building that is legal non-conforming, so 52% of 21,495 is 11,000 if used by personal services, all the legal things in the legal non-conforming use. So the place of worship leaves. Now, the legal non-conforming use can expand into the 2,700 square feet left vacant, 11,177 times 25% equals 2,794 square feet. I've got a map here that shows the lot. You can look at my figures on the side if you can read them. That shows the square footage of the lot. And the conclusion here is that I need this. I'm not saying that it's a monetary, profit-driven thing. I'm talking about survival. I appreciate your kind attention to this matter. I'm going to ask Megan. She wants to talk about what she's going to do with the building, which I'm sure you guys might be interested in.
Yep.
And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm not a public speaker, so I do real estate. So I am here
I'm
tonight.
sorry. If you could state your name and address, just for the record.
Megan Peck, and my home address is 1620 Wintergreen Lane, Fairview, PA. But
Thanks.
my business address is the address that was on the application. So I'm here tonight because I'm under contract for a purchase of a building for commercial use. I own a real estate title company, and I'm looking to expand my business. I currently rent an office in Mill Creek, the Joe Herbert Building on 12th Street. I've been there for almost 3 years now, and I'm outgrowing it, which is good. But I'm looking for space to like lay my hat, be more permanent. And I started that process at the beginning of this year, I think. And I have looked at various properties, and I looked at this property, and I feel like it would be a good business opportunity for the future. However, the current use of the property is not viable for me to run and establish my business. Obviously, it depends on what happens tonight and what happens for the future, whether or not I can continue with my contract for the property. But I'm asking for a permanent use of the building. I know rezoning is not something that is gonna be put on the board, which is fine. I'm not asking for that. But my fear is by purchasing the property, it being split in half is going to cause more issues. I'm gonna be in the same spot that Dave is in now, trying to sell the property because half of the property is zoned differently than the other half.
So it's all zoned the same way?
It's zoned R1, but the building is separated, so the
Well, it's
use.
by uses, so the
Correct.
zoning is not split,
Correct, the
but it
zoning's
is,
not
the
split.
zoning's all R1,
Correct,
but the uses, so if you were to go in as a business use, then the building at that point is all 100% occupied, Matthew, right? The rest of the uses are all existing non-conforming uses.
Correct.
And this, if this were to go through and her space was to go in as a business, then that would be granted a variance as a non-conforming use.
It would grant the use would be there under a variance, not like a non-conforming use. They're similar, but there's like a little.
Because it's under a variance, so
It would be for professional service, the variance request.
Correct.
be for a professional service, so any professional service could go in your space, and then the other spaces that are there, because they're non-conforming, if a similar use was to go in,
Yes, correct. Yes, as long as it's similar or less intensive of a use.
similar or lesser intense, so,
it's professional and personal, and then office space. It says legal non-conforming use, so that half of the building is personal services, professional services, office space, legal non-conforming use, grandfathered in.
You're referring to the use certificate.
I am, yes, I'm sorry, the use certificate, so
Okay.
that side of the building is AKA grandfathered in, from what I'm being told, because Matt's been very helpful.
so rather than asking for a variance for your particular use, that's why you're asking for it to professional services, because that way, if you outgrew that and moved to another building, you could rent your space to another professional service without issue, correct?
Correct.
Right, so my concern is, getting a new tenant in, and it's very wide, the personal, professional, and office space, the uses that can be used for those ones, but he said if there was anything more intensive, or if it didn't actually fit, I'm not sure if that would cause an issue in the future if if we determined that they were personal services, but zoning determined that they weren't personal services, because there's only, a few of them listed in the actual application. So I guess for me, it just would make sense to just make the building as a whole, the non-conforming, to be able to be what the building is. I mean, it walks like a duck, it talks like a duck, it's a duck.
If tell me I'm wrong, but that, everything would have had to have been that way prior to the zoning change to be non-conforming, then stay non-conforming, is that?
Correct.
But by granting a variance, we're essentially doing the same thing.
Correct. Yes, but the variance is narrowly tailored to just professional service.
Right, and just the definition for professional service, it includes offices of professionals offering and providing legal, engineering, accounting, architectural, interior, exterior design, sales and service, insurance, financial, real estate, appraisal, land surveying, landscape, architectural, and like services.
Which is
So it's
what
pretty
I would
broad,
fall under.
Right, and it's a pretty broad definition.
Right, but then the personal services is like the beauty shops and therapist office and stuff, and they're already there.
Right,
So
that
it would almost be like if you just took the permitted occupancy as it is for the whole building, and then it would just be entirely run the way that it's intended to.
Right, but that's not, I mean, we can grant variances for the use requested for professional services. So if, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but if, for instance, you wanted a personal service to go in that space that's now gonna have the variance for professional services, that would, we would have to, I mean, that would be another, either variance or an expansion of a non-conforming use.
Correct.
Would it be within our ability, I'm not going to speak for the rest of the board, but if there were a variance granted that was for personal services, professional services, office space, legal, personal, professional, or office space, and make that more broad?
My only concern with that would be that the application was specifically for professional services, and it was not advertised as such. But in this case, I would have to defer to Attorney Toman for his opinion on it.
Yeah, I think with respect to the application before us, we're limited to the, professional services. I mean, it doesn't necessarily foreclose, I guess, in the future for requesting, change.
I thought that I put in my application what the board would see appropriate for this.
Okay.
I think I did put that language in there, but I can't remember off the top of my head, and of course I did not bring it up there with me.
Oh, you do have, or similar as deemed appropriate.
Right.
As, not, yeah, as occupied and used as a place of worship can be designated as non-conforming use or similar as deemed appropriate by the township.
Matt,
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't necessarily be opposed if, I mean, based on that verbiage, when it was published, what was it published as? Was it just published?
Change of use from place of worship assembly to a professional service. The reason why I have it as professional service is under the application of the zoning hearing board. It says, relief requested and reasoning, my request for the variance is to be able to occupy and operate as a residential title agency / settlement company.
Okay.
So that's where-
yeah.
Yeah.
So are you proposing a use different from the resident title agency settlement company?
No, that's my use, and I plan to stay, for a long period of time, but if at some point in time I decide that I'm gonna retire, and I, wanna rent it out to someone else, then I have this issue 20 years from now. So, and it's held up the whole process of being able to even purchase the building, because I don't know if I can even operate in the building. And I guess it's just weird that half of a building has a different use than the other half. So I guess at this point, because of the rezoning that happened and the things that happened in the middle of the time before I bought the property, I'm here before you, like, can we just fix it so we don't have to do it again? I guess was kind of.
But I guess, to that point, it's like, okay, well, we're going into hypotheticals, like, if this were to occur in the future and some future tenant operating in some space that we don't necessarily know, I mean, we can't basically just say, like, this has no zoning.
Well, it's zoned R1, but then I'm just asking for like the permanent variance use of that property.
The variance will be permanent if granted for professional services, including all of that broad definition, and even says, and like services at the end. Now, you know, because even if we were to say, okay, let's amend the application to include, you know, all those other uses that were contemplated in the use.
Personal services and office space.
Office space and personal services, like, based on what you're saying, that doesn't sound like that's sufficient for what you want, because you want to be able to lease it to whomever in the future.
I just would prefer to not have to go through the process of doing this again if somebody else didn't conform to that use. Now, professional services is very broad. Obviously, my intent for the building, that half of the building that's currently occupied by the church, is to be renovated as more, you know, office space, broken up a little bit. I need conference rooms and stuff, which require permits, which, you know, have to be able to have the legal use of it. And so then the question is, where does the line get drawn? Because I want to do the facade of the building. Well, the facade's the whole building, but technically the variance is only for that half of the building that I'm occupying. And I guess, in my mind, I mean, my application does say non-conforming use, which is more broad than professional services. I mean, it was built as a commercial space, and it's located next to other commercial spaces, and Mill Creek's own documents emphasize that you guys want to create conditions for businesses to thrive and preserve its tax base. I would be paying taxes, I'm looking to get employees, I'm looking to pay taxes for, like, I'm looking to broaden Mill Creek's revenue and I'm a title agent, so I do title, you know, transfer taxes. Like, I'm looking to give back into the district. I'm just saying, can we just make the building what it is? It doesn't matter what is zoned on the outside, as long as I can use the building. Like, what if I want to, that space is probably like 2,500 square feet. What if I want to cut it up? What if I want to turn it into something else? You know, this non-conforming, I don't know why we wouldn't just be able to do that, and how I would determine what space is able to, like, what space does the variance cover? You know, what office space does it cover? Which office goes where? Like, I mean, it's just, it doesn't make sense.
That for purposes of the variance, so if the variance were to be granted, and let's just say for professional service as what's on the application for that title settlement company use, that would be specific to the space that was formerly occupied by the church? Or
Correct.
that is- I don't know, is the church is still there, so. I guess
It's
we
still
should say-
there, but there is a portion that I don't think the church is currently using, a small room that I want to turn into my copy room. So I don't know, like, what is that?
Right.
Is that covered in the variance? I mean, I don't, like, the building's split.
I mean, I'm assuming that was probably part of the lease premises or the space that they had the legal right to occupy.
Right, which did not include this office space. It's a,
You would
have
need
to
to
come
come
up.
up
yeah, sorry, you,
and state your name and address for the record.
So my name is Brian Peck. I am her husband, 1620 Winter Green Lane, Fairview, PA also. I guess to summarize, what we're looking at is simplifying the whole process of the building for the future. Because if we ever go to sell the building, then we're gonna have the same problem Mr. Haller is having with buyers being worried about the zoning in which parts of the building. So the professional part would be an acceptable variance for us to operate in. But to simplify the whole of the building for the future, I would say it should be all zoned the same way, or the variance should be granted the same across the board, which is why we included the verbiage, whatever the board deemed appropriate.
So the couple, I mean, and it's just vernacular, but when you're talking about being zoned the same way, that would be outside, you know, so as this
yeah,
board,
he's
we
saying
can,
zone, he means a variance.
right, we can grant a variance. As far
Yeah,
as zoning
yeah,
is
we're-
a supervisor sort of thing, and they would have to rezone, and that would be asking them to rezone something that they already rezoned
Right.
to residential.
We're not asking for a
Why?
rezone.
I can't answer
I
that. That was
understand.
something that was done outside of our purview or
Is that a feasible
anything
step
like
for
that?
this building? Would be to have it rezoned? Is there steps that we should take to try to pursue that route?
Matthew can answer that.
Yeah, if you would like to rezone it, you'd have to approach the you'd have to submit an application for rezoning. However, in this case, there's no surrounding commercial properties abutting it, so you'd be, what, essentially is
There's
called,
one next door.
but it's all zoned R1.
Yeah, it is.
Well, right, so like, everybody would have to come
Creating-
together, right? That's what
Correct.
you're
You would
saying.
be creating basically what's called spot zoning, which is, I don't necessarily think it's illegal, but it's highly frowned upon by the courts. With that being said, the Board of Supervisors may entertain it, or like you said, if you have a neighboring.
So what is the benefit of being an R1 versus a commercial? Like, what's the difference, other than the use of the property? What else, is there a tax advantage or any type, like what, anything else?
From a zoning standpoint, zoning regulates the land use and placement of the structures.
Okay,
I cannot speak necessarily regarding assessment, but I do believe generally commercial industrial properties tend to be taxed at a higher rate. But again, I can't
right.
verify that.
I just wondered if like, because I don't care that it's zoned R1 as long as I can do what I need to do in the building, you know what I mean?
Correct. That's what I kind of came up here to clarify for her and to you guys was, if the variance was the same through the whole building, it would make everything a lot less confusing for all parties involved, including future purchasers, us as we entertained future clients. Like we liked his idea of being an incubator for businesses. So like there's a lot of small individual offices in this place. We would like to continue the same path that he's been on with the building with some expansion. We have a general contractor quotes already for redoing the parking lot. This was my only question for you, Mr. Putz. Was see all this blue that is the MU2 corridor mixed use? It kind of just stops right there before it gets to us, and that's the only reason that I was bringing to your attention if you thought it was feasible to continue the mixed use.
The 2018 proposed map had it as
I
a
have
mixed
it.
use. I mean, I know you probably know, but the proposed map at the beginning of the comprehensive plan had it as mixed-use property. Like the two parcels next to each other. And I really don't care what you want to call it for zoning purposes. I just want to be able to do what the building is meant for. I mean, the only way to turn that building into a residential building would be to tear it down and start over. That's the only way, I mean, it's not a
No, it's-
residential
To
building.
be perfectly clear, yeah.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. I mean,
Yeah.
why was it changed to residential? We don't know that, and it
Yeah.
wasn't definitely asked of our opinion. What we can agree upon is that the space surrounding the church area is, as a non-conforming, is non-conforming as personal services, professional services, and office space, and this application states for professional services. So the difference would be that the portion of the church of which there's a key plan somewhere that shows the area the church is in, right? That section would not be allowed to have personal services or office space, only professional services,
Correct.
the way everything is on here that we have in front of us.
So Matt, the appellant here, their remedy truly is for them, if they purchase this property, is to file for a rezoning of the property. If she's concerned about reselling the property, and it's a valid concern, then her only remedy would be to come back to the township and ask for the property to be rezoned.
I don't,
If you're looking to have a much broader,
She's concerned about
Yeah.
resale at some point.
yes,
Yeah.
but if you want a much broader use base, R1, and this is generally everywhere, R1's probably the most restrictive because it's for, single-family residents that you're trying to protect from, commercial encroachment. In this case, you're correct, that if you want the much broader use table, you'd have to have the use, excuse me, not the use, but the zoning, the property rezoned. And I will say, this is one of those. I was just going to say, this is one of those situations, a very unusual situation where a property zoned commercial goes to residential and it's not all non-conforming. it's just it's an anomaly. Just because the prior zoning ordinance allowed the place of worship in the C2, the R1 also allows it.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there, Jeremy, a legal way? And I know you say because it's a bunch of what ifs.
I mean, we can't, like, I guess you mean in terms of granting a variance across the board? I mean,
Well, it wouldn't be across the board, it would be for this space, because the variance for this space would then be the same, allow the
consistent
same
with the
consistency as the uses that surround it in the building.
So then basically, the building would be all the same use.
It would be gone about in two different methods,
Right.
52% non-conforming, 48% variance.
And then, I mean, the only difference would be is like the variance granted, that's gonna be permanent. Like the non-conforming use, if that use goes away for a year or longer, then that non-conforming use goes away.
What does that mean? If that use goes away for a year
If
or
you
longer?
turned an office space into a church, for instance,
This is what, like, exactly what happened.
exactly what happened.
Okay.
If that space would have never gone to a church, this would have never happened. You didn't know that. I mean, there's no way to know that when the zoning changes, you know what I mean?
Well,
But if
at
you
the
were to-
time, actually, when the church went in, I think it was yeah, I mean, it still is a permitted use, but it's like a
Yeah.
similar argument. Like, if you were to put in, for instance, like now, a church, and the church were to go in the space of another office, I guess, and it would stay that way for a year, since a church is a permitted use, that non-conforming use, like, it couldn't be converted back to an office. You follow? Now, that's not to say that you couldn't come in and request the same relief. Like, the benefit of a variance is that the board, they can make a determination tonight to say, okay, you know, if it is just limited to the professional services, they could grant the variance to allow for the title company to go in there. To your point, you know, that's a use that's not necessarily consistent with the other uses.
Right, so
in
then
the
when I
area.
take that when I take that to do construction, and I take that one office space, then what happens?
If you take over that office space, I think that
I would still be a part of that non-conforming grandfathered in?
in terms of if her use, because I gotta go back to that use certificate. If she were to expand her use as professional service into those other areas that are not conforming, that would,
If it's expanding into another professional service, I wouldn't see an issue with that. But when you're expanding into, say, like the personal service, and then you're kind of like expanding a variance without authorization from the zoning hearing board.
and I guess just to be clear, and I think this is kind of what the question that they're asking too is, okay, well, so this building, there's different uses in it now that are non-conforming uses. Now, those non-conforming uses, if the use changes from, you know, personal service to professional service, you're saying that would be an issue because it's a change in use, and it would no longer be the legal non-conforming use?
I'm thinking, I apologize.
Because the use certificate doesn't say
Yeah, it's like, it's not
list each
clear.
space, it just says all three for
Right.
everything. 'Cause
Correct, yeah.
And I think that's where maybe there's some confusion too.
Yeah, like how did the building get split in half for use purposes, I guess? And where is that half? And who determined that
Well, because
half?
the church, well, there's a plan. There's a plan that exists somewhere that shows the church space within that building,
Okay.
okay? And when that happened, that church,
Turned
took
that
that use
square
away.
footage into the permitted.
yes,
And so there's a space that was basically like a mechanical room and overflow storage area between, and I think it's part of the other side, it's not part of the church. And we were going to incorporate that for storage and filing cabinets and stuff in her office. So we didn't want to violate any variance that was granted as professional use if we were overstepping our percentages. Does that make sense? Is why I guess we're looking for clarification there.
yeah.
may I interject? Now that I think about it, there would be nothing that would prohibit a non-conforming change of use from a professional service to a personal service. I think, and it looks like the board would agree, that those two uses are similar enough that wouldn't require zoning hearing board authorization, that the zoning officer under the ordinance could grant that change of use. So I wouldn't see an issue with, I don't want to call it like an undeclared space, but I'm going to call it that. An undeclared space that's part of the nonconformity moving over to the part with the variance, because it's still, it would be going from, say, like I said, personal to professional, or professional to professional, or even office to professional services.
Okay. So we've established that the 52%, we're going to call it, of the building that outside of the church can be used for any of those uses. My question for the 48% that remains from the church is the reason why we wouldn't be able to grant a variance to allow that as personal, professional, and office space because of the way it was advertised, or because it's too broad?
I mean, I think that in terms of the advertisement, I guess, the advertisement, it opens up the door for, I guess, the fact that citizens weren't made aware of these potential uses.
Prior to making a determination tonight, is there a way to correct that before a variance is granted, to have the end result be the end request?
I mean, we could, I guess, we could push it out to the next meeting.
And/or could the variance, depending on their timing of closings, and I realize that's all a real thing, could a variance be granted and a second application be submitted that would add the two other uses, and then a subsequent?
I guess the question becomes like when you have like all of these uses thrown into a variance request, I mean, it's all speculation. Like, I mean, we understand like your instant need in terms of the professional services, because that's what you plan to do there, and that makes sense, right?
Well,
But
I
it's
mean,
like- it's
yes,
like
but I
the-
fall under personal services too. So I fall under C1, I think it was C1, C2, MU1, and MU2. I qualify under all of those
Is that-
zoning purposes. So, I mean, I do have a broad, because
guess
of what I
would
do.
those qualify, like her proposed use, I mean, is it strictly professional services, or would it qualify as, I guess, those other uses, like personal services, office space?
Personal services are more like beauticians now, things to do with the person, tattoo parlors, et cetera.
Right.
Like health and beautification.
Correct.
Is there a definition of office space? I mean, I know that there.
Do not believe that office space is a delineated use. It's broken into like professional services, personal service, business services.
So I understand the argument about the notice, right, by
Right.
law.
Right.
But then the argument could be like, what is really the huge difference from the request of professional services, personal, I mean, they're
That's
all
also-
kind of all the same.
It's also why we
Industry,
included the
right?
language, whatever the board deemed appropriate, because we were
Right.
really unsure of what we were after as far as the variance
And
went.
the fact that for the non-conforming, you'd see them as similar.
Right.
I know the variance would state it a certain way, but I can't see a reason why it would never be approved in the future to
Right.
flip between the two, but I mean, that's,
Right. I mean, like in terms of, I guess, it is office space. Like an office space isn't necessarily a defined term. Like, how did you reach that? I guess when you did the use certificate and put in office space, what was the rationale? Just because it was more of like a generic like office use?
Did you fill it out or did I?
That's what they wrote on their application.
Do you want to answer this? Or did you?
Yeah, that's what
Okay,
So that's why it was included.
okay.
It was specifically stated professional service, personal service, office space as legal non-conforming use in that section.
And that's the permitted occupancy would be, I guess, just any generic office space based on the use certificate that was,
Their application, they wrote office space, correct?
but this was signed, I guess, by the zoning and development officer that has office space, right?
I don't remember this one.
I'm looking at use certificate number 3377. It was included as part of the application.
I apologize.
I can get you a copy.
Alan wants to talk again.
Yeah, so you're gonna have to.
I don't know if you have, I don't know if, can he stand up here too? He's got more vested.
Would it help you to see a picture of what space the church presently rents?
Oh, yeah, he does have an outline of the building.
Would that help you?
We got the gist of everything. We're
Yeah.
just trying to
Okay.
figure,
Yeah, they're just
figure
trying
the
to-
legality of
Yeah.
everything.
They're just trying to figure out what
Yeah, thank
lawyers
you.
do. How can we avoid legalities? Oh, it's warm in here. Toasty.
Because the variance, if the variance were to be granted as stated, you could certainly expand your 48% that you're in into the whole entire building, no issues. It's if the rest of the building were to expand into your space. And that would only be if it was,
Or if I cut up that space.
or if you
to-
cut up your space and only used half and wanted to
Right.
sell, rent part to a non-professional service to a personal service.
Then I would be in
Then you'd be-
violation of the code.
In order to do that, any sort of build-out, you'd have to get a zoning permit, which would then trigger that it's not allowed, and you'd have to get a
Right.
variance for that. But, I mean, just as stated with the non-conforming, a variance from personal to professional or vice versa is looked at as somewhat akin, but it still would require it.
Would it be possible to put some sort of condition that the use can only be changed to a professional service or personal service? I don't know if that's a possibility.
That what now?
To put a condition on the approval of the variance that the use not be changed to anything that doesn't meet the definition of a professional service or personal service?
Are you saying you don't want a bar?
I guess I'm not I mean, if we were to grant a variance that was to be for professional service and, and in theory, I guess, personal service, then, I mean, doesn't that?
Okay, I didn't know that that was the,
No,
okay.
I'm just trying, I guess,
I'm just throwing out options.
Right. What about, I mean, like the office space, like, is that a defined term? Is that?
Office is not a defined term in our ordinance. It's,
Yeah, it's office, like a complex is actually
Yeah,
the
it's
only
like office
definition. Right,
correct.
that's the only,
Yeah, but yeah, office by itself is not. It would be, since it's not defined and it's on the use certificate, we would use the lexical connotation of the word.
I mean, if you could make the whole building professional and personal services, that would just solve all the problems. I mean, really, if the variance, if there would be a variance for that building to have
Am I correct?
the entire building changed to personal and professional services,
But the problem with that is the application of the variance, is that what I'm understanding? It wasn't
I mean,
written.
it wasn't advertised, you know, I mean, we have in the past, I guess, allowed amendments to applications. You know, this is, you know, changing a use, which is, you know,
that's
little
already
different.
used that way, though. Half
So-
the building's already used that way, so.
right. No, I
Much
get that.
difference
The
from
problem
what's-
is that a variance is permanent, like those other uses, you know, obviously the township, when they went through and they did the rezoning, they identified that area as being predominantly residential, more so than, I guess, obviously in the past, when it was previously zoned business. So in theory, you know, the thought behind all that is if a non-conforming use stops for a period of a year or more, you know, absent some type of, I guess, fire or whatever,
I'm sorry, for nonconformities, the ordinance that's referred to as abandonment, so it's a willful abandonment of that use for no more, or for more than a 1 year or more
That's what I was
period.
asking. So like, there's a beauty shop in there and the girl left.
Vacant does not mean abandoned.
right?
Okay,
So as long as you, say you come in and you're like, hypothetical, you come in, you're like, all right, well, we're gonna expand the church into this area now. So after 1 year, you lose that nonconformity.
okay.
That's basically what abandonment.
So there's no way we're gonna get the building all one.
Well, I mean, the only way that you can get the building all one is through a change in zoning. Like, in terms of the variance, I mean, right now, I guess, with respect to the non-conforming uses, they wouldn't necessarily qualify for a variance because it's a permitted use.
Right,
You
not
follow?
necessarily.
So, I mean, we gotta, I guess.
I mean, I guess the
focus-
building then, if it has to be professional, I mean, I'm gonna change it all into
It's
professional
not-
space. I mean, I guess,
It's gonna
I
be
don't.
professional space. I don't even really see a lot of the personal use. I was just trying to simplify it for our future. You know what I mean? And I guess I wish I would have done a little bit more research with the verbiage on the application.
Yeah, I didn't know.
To
either.
try to include the personal,
How many
just to make it
personals?
simpler for us.
What personal services are in there now?
There's the salon, well, the salon, but there's still the
There was a salon.
massage
There was a
therapist,
massage therapist.
right?
Is she a professional massage therapist?
I don't know what
But
qualifies
she would be a
as personal.
personal service, I think.
If it deals with
Correct,
the
it's
body,
And
it's a
then
personal
there's that
service.
laser removal, I think, tenant, right? The laser removal tenant, you have that, she does some type of laser removal, right? So that, I mean, that's personal. And then you have are they psychologists or
Social worker.
The social worker, so she'd be professional and personal, actually. I think she falls under both.
So, given the layout, I know you had the layout, given the layout, is there even a situation where it makes sense where personal service would fit within this space?
Like,
Not for my purposes, but if I ever wanna go and sell the building and maybe chop it up a little more, cause I plan to occupy
was-
a lot of space, cause I wanna grow, that's my intent. But in 30 years, if I hang up my hat, you know, and I'm like, well, I could have more office spaces, because I do like, so I'm an entrepreneur myself, obviously. Starting my own title company 3 years ago, 4 years ago if you count the other one. So I've started 2 title companies, this is now my second. And I like the entrepreneurship of having the incubator. I'd never heard of that before. And I read the newspaper article. And keeping that space and that idea for smaller businesses to be able to come in and start is something that I would like to be able to offer the community too. So that was, you know, I wanted to kind of keep that theme. Well, if I don't occupy all that space, I could have more office space to let more entrepreneurs come in the future. So that's obviously a future problem, but again, you know, another
So-
$800 problem to come back and
And
talk
the-
about, you know?
The only thing, I guess, like, the mixed use includes professional services. So as long as we are okay with going over the 50% of the variance, we're still gonna be in compliance. Like, say if we occupy 48% with comprehensive closing services, we take that common room, and then maybe we take another office. we're still in compliance.
Yes, that's
Based
what I thought he
on-
said.
That's what you said before.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Correct, yes, as long as.
But then it leads me to my next question. What happens when I want to repave the parking spaces? Because it needs to be repaved, or the sign needs to be replaced? Like, how does that work for where my boundary lines are? Because it's not zoned that way. Is that where my problem comes in for zoning?
So regarding a parking lot repavement, provided you're, even if you were to expand it, provided you don't exceed the maximum parking space requirement for all the uses there, there'd be no reason to.
It's not expanding, it's just
But
redone.
then the uses, what are the parking spaces required for personal, professional, like, do those change?
Personal services, one for every 250 square feet, 4 for 1,000, or professional is 1 for every 200 or 5 for every 1,000
So
square
then
feet.
what do I
But-
do when I
Matt,
have a
if it's just-
change with parking spaces?
If it's just milling and top, you don't
No,
have to
yeah,
get a
no,
parking space.
no.
If it's just milling and top.
Yeah,
no.
milling the top's
That would be a
not an issue.
rearrangement of parking lot and hole and moving parking space. If you're milling it and topping it,
Right,
Yeah.
I just didn't know if that affected, and like, I wanna.
changing in kind in the same spot would not require any change in parking or anything like that.
No.
And I wanna do the outside of the building, and obviously there's,
That's,
The outside of the building is the outside of the building. The signage, that's where you would fit into you couldn't change more than the existing size, you'd be locked into.
yeah, well,
because there's also the sign permits. that
yes,
I-
there's sign permits. In this case, there's nothing that prohibits you from replacing one one sign face on, and I'm talking about the pylon or the freestanding sign near the road. You can pull out one sign and put another one in without a permit, as long as you're not doing anything structural. If you're
I wanna,
putting,
if I occupy the space, if I buy the building, I would be
That's another-
changing
that's another step.
the sign, right?
She does want to put another sign in, but that's a totally different meeting.
Correct, but
Yeah,
I'm
as you say, yes.
asking what this does from my perspective to be able to do that in the future, so.
yes, that's, honestly, I would say that we could discuss that at another
Right,
time.
but the zoning and the variance are not going to affect, like, that's separate?
Well,
Because
the-
it's R1,
While
so,
the sign is now considered a non-conforming sign in the R1 district. However, there are provisions in the ordinance for non-conforming uses in the R1 district for signage. In this case, I would recommend leaving, I shouldn't say necessarily leaving the sign as is, but not moving it, keeping it there. You can update,
Upgrade it, though.
yeah, that's what I mean, there's nothing
As long as
wrong.
we don't start over.
correct, and not expand it beyond what's
No.
there. Yeah, there should be no issue with that.
Oh, no, he's pulling out the law book.
I don't know if there's other people that need to
Well,
speak.
Yeah, I'm saying after that point.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it on the floor. I can discuss if there's on anything.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
you.
I appreciate your time, gentlemen.
sure.
And ladies.
Is there anyone else in the audience like to speak on this? Nope, township?
Good evening, Matthew Waldinger, 3608 West 26th Street, Director of Planning and Development for Mill Creek. Just wanted to say that the township does not have an issue with the granting of this variance. We do understand, as you guys now are aware, that it's an anomaly that it happened the way it did, being a permitted use in both the business and then in residential, and kind of leaving that hole there. So we don't have any issues with the granting of a variance.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to take a brief recess and I'll be right back. Okay, let the record be shown that we reconvened at approximately 7:15. On appeal number 25-31, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to grant the variance to convert a place of worship assembly to professional services in the R1 Single Family Residential District.
I will second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? So moved. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so moved.